Good evening. The 1960s, here in America, there was a countercultural revolution. The hippies. That's right, the hippies. Now, the hippies went counterculture in many ways, but especially when it came to issues of what we call morality. Free love, long hair, anything goes, no need for marriage. It made a revolution in the United States, and from there went elsewhere to religion, and what religion represented. The hippies it was anathema to the hippies, and what the hippies represented. Then came 1967, before the 6-Day War broke out, when there was threat that there would be a war, the Rebbe started the Tefillin campaign. And the Rebbe said to bring blessing and protection to our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land, every Yid should put on Tefillin. And then a very interesting image became seen in the streets of New York, on the campuses in America and in Israel. Hippies putting on tefillin. So there's the image of a hippie, what the hippie represents with his long hair, his wild look, colorful clothes, representing his culture, and he's wearing tefillin. To some in the religious community, this was too much to handle. To put the holy tefillin onto a hippie. Tefillin is parchment from the Torah. The name of Hashem is on the box of tefillin, the shin. How do you put tefillin on a hippie? A hippie represents vulgarity. Who knows what kind of thoughts are in the mind of the hippie? And there were some prominent rabbis who were critical of the Rebbe for instituting this tefillin campaign, that everybody gets to put on tefillin. Pictures of hippies and tefillin was a specialty. A hippie putting on tefillin. Now, this was a revolution in many ways. And this has to be emphasized, that although the idea of the Baal Tshuva, of turning around the life of a hippie personality, and I don't mean in a negative sense, because the Rebbe actually spoke highly of the youth of the hippie generation. And when I was a Bachar in 770, this was already in the early 70s, and it still was going on. College students would visit with their long hair, and we, the yeshiva Bacharim, who would be in their age, would speak with them and debate with them, and a lot of them were very open to Yiddishkeit, precisely because they were countercultural, precisely because they were anti-establishment, so they were open to Yiddishkeit. And a lot of Baalei Tshuva came from that generation. But nevertheless, the reality is that they lived in a culture where, by standards of religious people, were promiscuous, vulgar, etc. So there were rabbis who were critical. Chiefly it was the Satmar Rebbe, that how can you put on tefillin these people? You need a clean body, you need a clean mind. You have to be at a certain level. Now, even though there's Baalei Tshuva, and we speak highly in Chazal, speak highly about Baal Tshuva, and you have a verse in Yirmiyah, a verse in the book of Yirmiyah, that the prophet says, in the name of Hashem, "Im toitzi yokar mezoilel kefitiya. If you'll take out a precious person from what is worthless, zoilel, you take from purity, from impurity, you find a gem of a soul, a gem of a person. Your mouth will be like mine. He's empowering Yirmiyah to greatness through a haitzi yakar mizoilel, through taking out from zoilel, from worthlessness of a person, and to find the gem. And Rashi and the other commentators explain, to turn these people around to do tshuva, that's a great thing. But here we're talking about the hippie in the streets of Manhattan. And he's not in a state of the Baal Tshuva. He's in a state of impurity. He's in a state, I would say, tumah. He's tamei. And before he was a hippie, before he put on the tefillin, he's going to be a hippie after he puts on the tefillin. And you're doing a mitzvah, putting him on tefillin. What significance could have him putting on tefillin? And we're going to understand that by studying chapter 11 in our book on the Essence of Chasidus, in Yerushalayim Teres Chasidus. Because this is a thoroughly Hasidic, revolutionary idea that was emphasized especially by the Rebbe, and it goes back to the essence of what Chasidus is about. So we're reading the beginning of chapter 11. Habir hanal shal pidalat chelke hapshat nemesh drusoid nefesh ruach neshama nefesh ruach neshama chai shabateria. We've been talking about Moida Ani in the last two chapters. How Moida Ani is the foundation of the day, expressing thanksgiving to Hashem for giving us life this morning, for returning our soul, for returning our consciousness every morning. And in the chapter 10, he spoke about he spoke about 4 interpretations of understanding, and now we're going to speak about the 5th, the Hasidic focus on Moida Ani, on this thank you to Hashem that we say every morning. But the Rebbe over here connects it that these 4 levels of Torah, Pshat, Remesh, Jur, Soid, is connected to Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, to the 4 levels of the soul. And then we're going to speak about the 5th level of the soul. So there's a medrash that says that the Neshama has 5 names. And Chasidus and the Kabbalah says the 5 names are not just different labels for the same thing, but these names represent different levels of the Neshama. So, and one category are the 4, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama. That's in one category. Then Yechida is the essence of it all. So, these 4 levels of the Neshama are connected to the 4 levels of understanding Torah and interpretations of the Torah. So before we go how this is expressed in understanding Moida Ani, the Moida Ani prayer, but I wanted to focus on this very interesting point. Because what we're saying over here is that the 4 levels of Torah understanding are connected with 4 levels of the Neshama. Neshama and Torah. Now this is important to understand, because there is a line in the Zohar, Oyraisa v'kotchebrichu kol echad. In other places there's a text that says, Oyraisa v'kotchebrichu v'yisrael kol echad. That Torah, Hashem, and Israel is all one. So therefore Torah is one with Israel, with the Jewish people, with the Neshamas Yisrael. and it's one with Hashem. Torah expresses through Torah is expressed Hashem. Through the Jewish people is expressed Hashem. Through Torah, Israel is expressed, and through Israel, Torah is expressed. Why is Torah alive today, a living Torah? Because Jews are living Torah. We're wearing tzitzis, we're davening, we're saying the Shema, the same text that our ancestors said almost 3,500 years ago. We're saying the same words. We're reading the same scroll. We're celebrating the same holidays. We're blowing the same shofar. We're putting on the same tefillin. So we make Torah come alive. And Torah makes us come alive. And both Torah and Israel is making Hashem come alive, so to say, in the sense that Hashem is a reality in this world. Without the presence of Torah and Israel, Hashem wouldn't be a reality in this world. So therefore, one reflects the other. So if there are 4 levels in Torah, Pshat, Remesh, Jur, Sait, which we elaborated about in the previous chapters. So this is reflection of 4 levels of the neshama, of the nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, which represent nefesh is connected with action, ruach is connected with emotions, neshama is connected with the intellect, chaya, willpower, and yechida, number 5, is the essence of it all. So therefore, after we explained in the previous chapter the Moida'ani, how there are specific details of 4 levels of understanding Moida'ani, these would be connected to the 4 levels of the neshama of our soul that is within us, in our actions, in our emotions, in our intellect, and our willpower. Now, over Torah Chasidus, Yechidah Sheb'Torah, Umaveres B'Yer Klali. And now, as we're coming to the explanation and the focus of Chasidus, we're going to have a more general explanation. And this general explanation is going to give insight and inspiration into the 4 other interpretations of Moida'ani. So now the Yechida, since Chasidus is Yechida, there's just like in the Neshama there's Yechida, there's that essence. So too in Torah there's, so to say, that essence level. And because of, therefore, it is going to be a more general. The other 4 levels are more reflective of specific human qualities. Action, emotions, intellect, willpower. The essence is the essence of it all. The Yechida of the nefesh, the essence of the neshama, is connected also to their action, to their emotions. It's not boxed into it because it transcends it. It's the essence of it all. So therefore, it's going to be a general point, a general focus that Chasidus focuses on. And when we get to that, then we'll see how that is reflected and sheds light and insight in everything else. So, the explanation of Moida'ani Chasidus is, and this is a quote from a few lines from the previous Rebbe. Haschalasi shall say that Yom Moida'ani. The day starts with Moida'ani. What does it mean it starts? You're still in bed. You open up your eyes. You didn't wash Negelwasser. You didn't wash your hands. You're still tummy. And when you're tummy, you say Moida'ani. This is the most important line. The Moida'ani of a Jew cannot be affected by Tumah. You can't make Tomei the Neshama of a Yid. What is the Moida'ani of a Jew? That when he's still Tomei, when he's still impure, when he's still quote unquote contaminated with some spiritual impurity, he recognizes Hashem, he's thankful to Hashem. He can't even say Hashem's name, he can't make a bracha, he can't make a prayer. And in that state of impurity, he's connecting to Hashem. That's the Hasidic focus of Moedani. Let's focus on the Moedani, not about the thank you, not about to Hashem, but when it's said, on what conditions he is. And this is a very deep insight. What Chasidus is saying over here is that the fact that even when someone is tamei, is impure, he can connect to Hashem, that shows on a very deep connection that the worst tuma, the worst impurity, the worst spiritual contamination, if you want, cannot change. That is the Hasidic focus of Moedani. It could be a Jew that is missing one thing or another thing. His actions are not 100%. His emotions are all messed up. His mind is warped. His willpower is in the wrong place. His moida'ani, his connection to Hashem, is always whole. You can't pollute it. You can't pollute your moida'ani. So what is that saying? That's saying that even if a Jew apparently is in a state of spiritual pollution, contamination, corruption, all of his qualities, he's totally messed up. He is living a vulgar lifestyle. He's wild. The moida'ani is still there. And what he says, the mitzvahs that he does matter and count and are important to Hashem. But the question is, how could that be? How could he say that there's something that is whole in him spiritually? His Yiddishkeit is whole. How can we consider his Yiddishkeit whole when everything about him is cracked and blemished and polluted and spiritually polluted? How can we say there's something there that's whole? And that's where Yechida comes in. Yechida is something special. Because Yechida is the essence, and the essence cannot be polluted. Actions can be polluted. Nefesh can be polluted. Ruach, emotions can be polluted. The intellect can be polluted. There's warped ideas. The willpower could be polluted. But the essence of his neshama, what he calls the moida'ani, cannot be. Yechida is not action. It transcends action and emotion and intellect. What's Yechida? And he says, that is only the Yechida that is in that state. The four levels of the neshama, the four levels of the soul, it's possible to spiritually contaminate. It's possible to blemish. It is possible to stain. The Yechida, the essence of his neshama, is always one with the essence of Hashem. Ein shaykh kol pkam betum b'chas v'sholem. V'nishar tam b'shlemusei. Here we have an explanation. The essence of his neshama is where? The essence of his neshama is what? The essence of neshama is always connected with Hashem. See, Hashem made a neshama. The essence is clinging upwards. The four lower levels are in the downwards direction. And the Yechida is connected to the rest in the downwards direction because he is the essence of it all. The Yechida is the essence of it all. And this goes back to the words of the Eitz Chaim, and it's developed in Chasidus, that what is Yechida? Nitzutz boire, sinis shlabish, benitzutz nivra. It is a spark of Hashem himself that is enclosed in that level of the soul. And it's that level of the soul, so to say, that houses God himself, Hashem himself, that cannot be polluted because Hashem transcends everything. You can't pollute Hashem. Hashem is everywhere. This is one of the big points of Chasidus, that there is no place outside of Hashem's presence. And some of the philosophers of the Misnagdim and earlier generations were struggling with this idea. So Hashem is in a bathroom, in a toilet. Hashem is in a house of idol worship. Hashem is everywhere. So the Kabbalah talks about les asar ponim, when there is no place that is empty of Hashem. So there's a whole discussion in Jewish philosophy and Kabbalah philosophy about the tzimtzum, and the tzimtzum shouldn't be taken literally, and and Hashem is here, Hashem is there, Hashem is everywhere literally, because Hashem cannot be affected by the vulgarity that comes from here. And since the Yechid of the Neshama is one with Atzmusa Yisbarach, is one with the essence of Hashem, so therefore all of the sins that are done, what the Kabbalah and the Gemara speaks about, how our sins pollute and contaminate our soul, which we learned about in the Geras Tshuva, and what the Gemara speaks about, the negative energy, the angels of evil created by our sins, all of that doesn't affect the essence of Hashem, and it doesn't affect the Yechida. So therefore, what's going on here is that a person is in a state of tumah. This is emphasized. This is the emphasis of the Moeda'ani. This is the focus of the Moeda'ani. The focus of the Moeda'ani is this Yid didn't wash Negavasa. He didn't make a bracha. He can't make a bracha. He can't make a bracha even if he wants to. And he's still connected to Hashem. That's Yechida. In parentheses, it says something very deep, and it's elaborated more in the footnotes, in the Hebrew original footnotes. The English also has some of it. He's saying, so what do we have? Well, we're talking about the contrast between what essentially is happening is we're saying two prayers in the morning, thanking Hashem for our revival. One we say in bed before we wash our hands. The other one we say afterwards when we open a siddur, and we say a bracha elakai neshama satabi tahiri baruch ata Hashem hamachzeh neshamas avur mesim. So we say it once in bed in a state of impurity. Then we wash our hands, we're dressed, and we're in a proper state of mind and physical state to say the bracha with Hashem's name. We say it twice. So what is the inner meaning, the insight, the Hasidic insight for both of them, for the Moed Ani that's made without saying Hashem's name. So he says, "V'zeu tama pnimya mashe b'Moed Ani le'nisker shum shem zayin shem shein mechalkim." The inner reason, the Hasidic, insightful reason why the Moed Ani doesn't have Hashem's name is because ki mekiva shemoed ani bo mitzad b'chinas hayechida etzma neshama ari hado shel etzma neshama letzmus yisbarach lo itfus b'shem. You can look at the same thing two ways. Why in the Moed Ani is not mentioned Hashem's name? What's called Pshat and what's called Pnimiyus HaTorah. The simple reading of this, and the inner Hasidic meaning of it. The simple meaning, you know why there's no Hashem's name is not in the Moed Ani? Because he can't say Hashem's name in the Moed Ani, because he didn't wash Negel Vaser, and he's not spiritual in his state to be able to say Hashem's name. So therefore, in the text of the Moed Ani, you don't have Hashem's name. What's the Hasidic insight? You know why it doesn't have Hashem's name? It's because the Moed Ani prayer is beyond Hashem's name. He brings a line from the Kabbalah that when Hashem gave the Ten Commandments, it says, I, Anoichi, I, Hashem, Hashem's name, and Lakecha, your God. I, Hashem's name, your God. What's the I? Because there is the essence of Hashem is beyond names. The Lai Itfas B'Shem. It is, why is the essence of Hashem beyond names? Because a name is a label, and the essence of Hashem is beyond limitations, consequently beyond labels. So you can't put it in 4 letters, or 5 letters, or any amount of letters. It's beyond anything that limits it. So therefore, the Moed Ani doesn't have Hashem's name in it, because the Hasidic insight of Moed Ani is that it comes from a place that is higher than names of Hashem, the Yechida. You have the same, with seemingly opposite views on the same line of Moed Ani. Why isn't Hashem's name in the Moed Ani prayer, in the first thank you that we say to Hashem in the morning? A, because we're still impure, we didn't wash our hands. Or B, because we're in a state of connection with Hashem is beyond Hashem's name. That's the Hasidic focus of it. Now in the 131, if you're following the Hebrew, so he explains what I just said in Ayin Ches, and then he adds something in the italics, a certain historic reference to these 2 expressions of thank you that we say in the morning, the Moed Ani and the L'Kai Netzor. In the Gemara, there's no reference to the Moed Ani prayer. So therefore, we're talking about, the Gemara was concluded about the secular year 500. We're now 2020, 500. So, by the year 500, Jews were around for about 2,000 years. So now, we're close to, less than 2,000 years, between 1,500 and 2,000 years. So, there's no mention of Moed Ani. So when do you thank Hashem for your revival every morning? So the answer is, well, we say a prayer when we get out of bed. We say a prayer. The prayer with the bracha. Baruch atah Hashem hamachzin neshamas l'moishim. Blessed is Hashem who returns our souls to us in the morning. So we make a bracha. That is in Gemara. And that was instituted earlier than the Gemara. It was instituted in the time of the Anshe Knesset Hakdela when they made all the prayers. It was instituted maybe 900 years before that. 800 years before that. So Moed Ani only started afterwards. That means when the Jewish people lived in the time of the temple, first and second, there was no Moed Ani. And at the time of the Gemara, no Moed Ani. When the era of the Gemara ended, and the real splitting of Jewish communal life into all areas of the world really got started. Because during the time of the Gemara, the centers of Jewish life was in Bavel. There was one center. So it moved from Israel to Bavel. That's where the yeshivas were, that's where the scholars were, and that is recorded in the Gemara. Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud. But then, this thing fell apart. And Jewish communities and yeshivas, smaller and less significant halachically, were found in North Africa, and were found in Europe, and all over, and still in Bavel also. But there was this dispersion, and this developed an Ashkenaz Jewry and a Sephardi Jewry, and different communities and different yeshivas and different customs in kashrus and understanding the law and in marriage, like we have in Jewish law today. There are different customs and different understanding of the halach and so on. And also persecution. Why were they all over the place? Because they were driven from one country to another country. Jews came from here and to there, from Spain to Turkey. All of this is in the afterwards. And that is the background in which Moed Ani was developed. And that's why he says, makes this observation. In Talmudic times, they didn't say Moed Ani. We're saying over here that according to the Hasidic view and focus on the Moed Ani, there's really an advantage of Moed Ani over other prayers, because it comes from a place that is higher than Hashem's name. It's coming from Yechida. And it reflects a connection to Hashem that is on a higher level. That's why it's in Tumah. So it would seem that when Jews are on a higher level, closer to their sources, in Bavel, time of the Gemara, and the time of the Mishnah, the time of the prophets, that they should have been developed then when Jewish people were in a high spiritual level. That's when they should come up with this idea of Moed Ani. That's what the Rebbe is addressing. Really could be asked in the form of a question. We're saying now that the Hasidic inside of Moed Ani reflects a prayer that is on a higher level. It's on the level of Yechida. It expresses a higher connection with Hashem, that even when a person is tum, he recognizes and thanks Hashem. So then it should have been developed in a time of Jewish history when the Jewish people stood on a higher level. So he explains, Yeshlema b'derech efsher. Lefi she'esayris ubita yechidu dafka hasher gam mishu tamei u'makom kamoida. You know when greatness is expressed not in the best of times, in the worst of times. When the Jews are in a state, or persons in a state, where he's tamei and nevertheless recognizes Hashem. That brings out that's a yachid expression. When a person is spiritually in a lower level, and in that lower level he's still connecting to Hashem, that takes a deeper push, a deeper neshama power, neshama force, and therefore that's when it's expressed. And he gives an example about derech hayadua, shekoyach hamasiras nefesh hu begilui yester bizman hagolos, or befrat beikvsum de meshichim bizman habayis. Chasidus, especially in the writings of the previous Rebbe, points out that when is the highest expression of Jewish commitment, which is sacrificing one's life for Yiddishkeit. When is that? The highest expression of commitment to Hashem is sacrificing for Yiddishkeit. We still say every morning the Akedah, which Avram was tested if he was ready to sacrifice his son to Hashem. I say, wow, he did that. And the greatest challenges are the time that bring out the greatest expressions of faith. This act of sacrifice, where does it come from a person that he's ready to give his life for Hashem? It's not a logical thing. Logically say, well, it's my life. But it comes from a deeper commitment. And he explains that the koyach hamasiras nefesh, this power to give your life up for this ideal for Hashem, comes from yechida. It's a yechid expression. That's because he's so intensely connected to Hashem. Because Hashem is, so to say, in him. Nitzutz Boira, the spark of the Creator, is enclosed in his essence. So therefore, he's going to give his life for Hashem. So when does this come to the fore? In the challenging times. Bizman HaGolus, in the time of the exile. In the worst of times. There's a medrash that says, why are the Jewish people compared to the Aleph? Because Ein Hazayis Noisin Eshamnoi Achakoich Noisai. The Aleph doesn't give its oil until you crush it. And therefore, the best of Jewish glory is expressed in the worst of times. So if you want to bring out the oil, the juice, the essence, it's precisely in the worst of times, in Golus. And it's physically so, and similarly spiritually. If a person who's in a state of tumah, and suddenly out of nowhere he says, I have to put on tefillin. Where does that come from? If he's so engrossed in impurity, if he's so spiritually dead, where does this idea to put on tefillin come from? It's because deep inside there is the yechida, and the yechida cannot be dead. You can deaden your senses, you can deaden your mind, you can fry your brain spiritually, but your yechida, you can't touch it. So therefore, even if a person spiritually is fried out, so to say, there is in there that point, that godliness, that godly essence, or in Yiddish they used to call that pin tel yid, the Jewish point. And that's where it can come from. And that is the secret of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, we have 5 prayers. Ma'ariv, Shachris, Musaf, Mincha, Ne'ilah. And it says in Chasidus, these 5 prayers correspond to the 5 levels of neshama. And by the end of Yom Kippur, Ne'ilah, it's Yechida. That's why everyone comes running into the shul to hear the shofar. They're not coming to hear the shofar. It's the Yechida that's pushing them to come into shul. And our shul is packed, and all shuls is packed. Our shul is about 700-800 people full into a room which only has like seats for 400. And then when we say the Shema, everyone's shouting at the top of their lungs. And I stand there and I'm leading that part, and I see some people that the whole time go like bored. But when everyone's shouting Shema and Baruch and Hashem Elokim, everyone's shouting. Where did that come from? If the person considers himself Jewishly dead, what happened? The answer is, you can't be Jewishly dead. Maybe in the level of nefesh, your action. Maybe a level of nesham, of ruach, your emotions. Maybe you're brain dead intellectually. Your will is totally corrupted. But the Yechida is uncorruptible. And that is why Yechida is obvious more in the worst of times. He says, Ikus the Mashiach, on the heels of Mashiach. When we're living in Ikus the Mashiach, Mashiach's times. And what's going on in Mashiach's times? Because there's nothing left. And there's no reason, logically, where some inclination for Yiddishkeit should come for totally secular Jews. So when you're left with nothing, there's Yechida. Because you can't take away Yechida. Communism stole nefesh because they couldn't do the mitzvahs. Stole their intellect and emotion because the communists closed the yeshivas and didn't allow the shuls to even emotional expression of Yiddishkeit. So they can rob the action, they can rob the emotion, they can rob the brain, they can rob the willpower, but they can't rob the Yechida. That's why you have Yidden who totally unconnected. It's only they have a connection to Yiddishkeit. And that is why in the worst of times, suddenly the Yechida kicks in. And that is why Moida'ani doesn't have the name of Hashem, because that Yechida connection is connected to Hashem on a level that's beyond names. And that's why this is in Chasidus. We find something interesting. You have the discussion of different levels of the neshama. So you have discussion, especially in the Kabbalah. You have some in Jewish philosophy. But they don't explain Yechida. It's hardly even mentioned, even in the Kabbalah Yechida. V'atshem atzini yisayrim azu, asher moine mafartas hamadregas shebeneshama nefesh ruch neshama neshama neshama. In the Zohar, mostly when they say neshama, nefesh, ruach, neshama, they say, and there's the soul of the soul, which is the 4th level. No mention yechida. Ubchinis yechida ain't a nimnis. It's not considered yechida. Chai yechida, those 2 higher levels, are not counted as, it's beyond. It's the neshama of the neshama, and they don't differentiate and make a distinction between level 4 and 5. Ki nechlalas ben haneshama leneshama b'chinas haychaya. Al b'chasidus yechida shebeter muvura barucha inyana shel hayechida. You can look in the Kabbalah. Yechida is a line in Eitz Chaim. Eitz Chaim is the main collection of teachings of the Arizal in the whole heavenly structure of the neshamas and the worlds and the hicholas and the names of Hashem, Eitz Chaim. That's the Eitz Chaim of Reb Chaim Vital. He records the whole Teres Arizal. One line about Yechida, maybe two lines about Yechida. The Kabbalah Sfarim that elaborate more, they're talking about the lower levels of Neshama. Where is really the focus on Yechida? Is Chasidus. Why is in Yechidus? Because Yechidus is, as we're coming closer to Mashiach, and the whole point of Mashiach is the climax of the Jewish experience, the climax of creation, the climax of our connection with Hashem at the highest level. So Yechid is going to come to the fore. And that's what Chasidus does, is to prepare the world for Mashiach, is to bring out the Yechidah. And that's why it's elaborated in Chasidus. And in Hasidic literature, if you want to take it, the Rebbe's not saying it here, because this is a text from the Rebbe's work himself. But in all of Chabad literature, and there's a library of Sfarim, hundreds of Sfarim. Each Rebbe wrote about 40, 50 Sfarim, and Memorim, and so on. The Rebbe elaborates more about this Yechidah point than any of the Rebbes before him. Why? Because in the earlier generations of Chasidus, they didn't need so much Yechidah talk and Yechidah experience, because if most Jews are religious, and most Jews share the values of Torah and Yiddishkeit, some more, some less, but there is a Jewish, so to say, Torah culture in the society, so you don't need the Yechidah to kick in. The olive isn't pressed. But now, post-World War II, and even earlier, you can't survive without Yechidah. In Baal Shem Tov's time, they also needed Yechidah. There was physical persecution, there was psychological depression, there was bad times, like we mentioned in our first class, that the Jewish world was in a state of unconsciousness, fainted. So you need a Yechidah when the consciousness is asleep and in a coma. You need something deeper. And as the times went on, from the time of the Baal Shem Tov 300 years ago, with the secularization of Jewish life, first in Germany and France, and then even in Poland and in Russia, and now we have such a secular world, and that's where the Rebbe sent shluchim all over the world. Why you send shluchim all over the world? The countries that are so distant from Yiddishkeit. When I moved to Caracas, it was 1978, and I was heading a yeshiva of 10 Bachrim, Chabad Bachrim, 18 years old, who were in a high level of learning. They needed Rosh Yeshiva to direct them. So I went with them, and we started yeshiva in Caracas. There was a Chabad Shliach there dealing with the community, and then we came there. And I remember I came to a person's yard. Caracas was a beautiful place, a very affluent Jewish community, half Ashkenaz, half Sfard. You had about 25,000 Jews living there. A warm community, but very far from Torah observance. Very far from observing anything. And a yeshiva in Caracas. So there was a man who was one of the people close to Chabad, one of the sponsors of the yeshiva, and we visited him, I think first and second day that I was there. He takes me to his yard. He had a front yard, grass, it's green all year round in Caracas. And there's a patch in his front yard, beautiful grass, but there's a little corner about 3 feet by 3 feet, it's brown. Does you see this? You see this? See, you know how many times I changed the soil, I tried this, I tried that. Grass doesn't grow over here. And just like grass doesn't grow over here, I live here already 10 years, I can't change grass. No matter what I do, I don't think Yiddishkeit is going to grow in Caracas. You're coming with a yeshiva, the Rebbe believes in it, but it's not going to happen. But the Rebbe, he could see what others couldn't. And Yiddishkeit changed. The yeshiva changed Caracas. There's a lot of Yiddishkeit today. There's the Sephardi kollel, Sephardi institutions. It all started with the yeshiva in Caracas. A lot of these heads of a kollel in Caracas, he started coming to afternoon after the Herzl Bialik school hours ended. He came to the yeshiva. We learned with them Chumash. We learned with them Yiddishkeit. They came to the camp. That's where it all started. What did the Rebbe see? The Rebbe looks at a Jew and it looks like a place and grass is never going to grow there. Yiddishkeit is never going to sprout there. And the Rebbe sees Yechida. And that's what this is all about. So just like there's Yechida in Neshama, there's Yechida in Torah. The study of Chasidus is a study that brings to the fore that essence of the Neshama. It brings it to the fore. Because in Torah, Chasidus is the Yechida of it. And all of this is really leading up to what's going to be in the next chapter, going back to the 4 interpretations of Moedani, according to Pshat Remesh Drosoid. And now we learn in this chapter that the focus of Chassidus is that the Moedani is said even in a state of impurity. Now that point is going to shed new insight in all of the other 4 interpretations of Chassidus. And the bottom line is that we're supposed to look at another Yid, see the essence of his neshama, and look at ourselves also. Sometimes we look at ourselves and we say, does it matter what I do? Do my mitzvahs matter? This is not in order, that is not in order, third is not in order, I still didn't change, I'm still with my old shtick. Yes, you matter because you have Yechida and everything counts and everything is important. And that's the Chassidish view of everything. It's a very positive view, it's a very hopeful view, and that's what's going to change the world to bring Mashiach. Good night.